So the government is set to ban disposable vapes in the coming weeks. So this is your Elf bars, your Geek bars, your Lost Marys, the sort of various colourful plastic sticks and squares sold in every corner shop in this country that ended up littering, the high streets. Probably, I mean, certainly of Swindon, also my own town,
Southeast London,
and in
the gutters.
Yeah, many other places I've been. Prescient in this conversation is Ted Kaczynski's The Industrial Society and Its Future. So you should check out the book club that Josh and Carl did on this. Enlightening stuff. So this ban being done by the government in the next few weeks, the reasons given for it are as follows. So protecting children, think of the children, is one. So Rishi Sunak himself has voiced his concerns about these products in May. He said, I have 2 young girls. It looks like the vapes, are targeted at kids, which is ridiculous. I don't want my kids to be seduced by any of these things. Fair enough.
Well, related to the seduction of children, here's the reason why...
Get that clipped.
That's going to go on Lotus as a concept. Yeah. Here is why I am for this ban. Have you noticed all these Pakistani cash-only vape shops that are opening up everywhere?
Weird.
Yeah. Well, if we just take away their ability to do business, you just smash them overnight.
Yeah.
So you wanted to protect the children. I wanted to take away money from foreigners. We are not the same.
Yes. Yeah, we'll be getting into our own reasons for supporting this ban, as we both do later. But we'll run through the government's reasons because they're a lot more tepid, let's say. But the think of the children argument is pretty strong because I don't know about you, but I've seen kids using these things all over the place. Like I was in Crewe one time up north.
You poor sod.
Explains it. And there was this kid who was probably no older than 6, like just walking around puffing on one of these things, and I was just like, Jesus. But yeah, that's pretty tame.
I mean, that's of course as well the parents' fault or lack of parents' fault.
Well, of course, yeah. But this is the thing: if they're there, then if they're not there, then even bad parenting, it won't fall into their hands, right? So the second reason is the environmental impact. So according to The Guardian, so take it with a pinch of salt, but apparently 5 million vapes are discarded every week.
I can believe that as well. But obviously, these are the people that didn't care about disposable masks, which are now more of them in the ocean than jellyfish. But I am sick of all the disposable plastic that ends up in my bloody drinking water.
Well, that's the thing. I think as conservatives, these are the sorts of issues that we should care about in when we talk about the environment, because these are tangible things. As I said, I go out and I see this crap like littering the streets, and it's a tangible thing, not like something like climate change, which is just like, okay, what do you even mean by that? But I think, again, I'm fairly partial to this argument. That's eight vapes a second get chucked away. It's just, it's depressing. And the third argument is the NHS, of course.
Okay, well, I'm immediately against this ban now.
Yeah. I mean, it always follows that the appeal to the NHS has to be made because it is the national religion. But yeah, apparently £500 million could be saved if half of smokers switch to vape.
Okay, and how much would be saved if we just deported all the foreigners that keep using it without ever paying into the system?
Can't ask that question.
No, it would be racist.
It's me, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just utilitarian cringe that comes of having an NHS. That said, I actually am not opposed to the NHS. I mean, in its current form, I don't like it, obviously. But I don't really like this sort of American argument of like, it's nothing to do with me if my neighbor gets cancer. Like, he should sort that out for himself. I don't like that attitude to your countrymen, right?
No, but I don't think state-funded programs would have a monopoly on that attitude. I mean, the Victorian healthcare system was, in terms of outcomes, obviously technologically limited, but you had particularly like middle-aged women serving a useful community role with institutes and local church groups and the like, and you'd be able to set up charity sectors, particularly because if people had more money in their pocket and were far more Christian, would feel inclined to donate to the neighbors that they knew that were ill.
Yes, indeed. So those are the reasons given by the government, and this issue has sparked quite a debate online about the vapes in particular, but also about the more general role of the state in things like public health and that sort of thing. So our mutual acquaintance.
Yes. Okay. Look, Reem, I can always rely on you to come up with the most shit-lib take imaginable. Lovely girl, but
so I've been talking to Reem about this issue, and she does feel very strongly about it. I think this tweet here pretty much sums up libertarian philosophy in a single sentence.
Yeah, let me enjoy my candy floss flavored vape in peace. Now, that is one of the reasons why I'm against these things on principle. And I've said this to Josh yesterday, because Josh has been trying to quit smoking on and off, and he's got some sort of flavored vape thing. And
I wasn't gonna expose Josh like that, but you've just gone and done it.
Yeah, well, we all dob each other in here, don't we? I just said it's gay.
Yeah.
It's just, like, to quote Nick DiPolo, really, you're vaping, you look manly with a cock hanging out of your mouth. What are you trying to do? Steam broccoli, iron my shirt? Go and get a cigar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as I said, we will get onto our own reasons, and that is a main one for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a sort of, the first line of argument that's been deployed is just the libertarian argument, the appeal to freedom. It's my right to vape if I want to, and all the rest of it. Okay. Live and let live, man.
In all seriousness, like I don't really care that much, but I'm just going to shrug if it gets banned and goes away. It genuinely, it doesn't impact me. I can only see really positives coming from it.
Yeah.
And I do have a natural posture which says that I would prefer if the government weren't meddling micromanagers henpecking me at every turn. But I don't count this among it. Like it's not. I fall on the side of principle that the government shouldn't exactly be telling me what to do. However, there are certain industries where they need to step in.
Yeah, of course.
And so this one, fine, do what you want.
Yeah. So there we go. If you want my take on freedom as a political cause, you can read this article here. It was offended quite a few people, so I'd recommend that.
Good, it's a good one then.
Yeah, shameless self-promotion there. The next line of argument is essentially the enforce the law argument. So Reem again here says, but it's for the children, most common argument used to take away our freedoms. It's already illegal for the children to be vaping, which is true, right? And this chap as well, Lance Churchill, it would be absurd to outlaw booze for all ages because some children manage to sneak a bottle of Frosty Jacks or Glen's vodka, yet a vape ban follows the same logic. Surely the solution is to enforce existing regulations, not create brand new ones. And finally, the IEA, a ban on disposable vapes will restrict the choices of adult smokers who could benefit from switching. The answer to underage vaping is to enforce laws that already exist. And again, it's a good argument.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, policing in this country is so permissive that it's embarrassing. I mean, we have become an international joke because of the state of our policing. I mean, look at it. It's terrible. So I do agree, actually, that enforcing pre-existing laws is preferable to creating new ones. That said, I still support the vape ban, but again, it's not for the same reasons as the government have stated. Finally, there is the health argument. So the IEA again, talking about how the vape ban could cost lives. Now, a lot of people basically make the case that vapes are safer than cigarettes. Possibly that's true, but I kind of think they haven't been around long enough for there to be actually any meaningful evidence to support that case. Because these things, just very quickly, if I just spin on here, this piece of research came out a couple of months ago saying that these vapes contain like lead and nickel and that sort of thing. And that doesn't surprise me because these are, it's like synthetic chemicals. What do you think you're doing to your body? Yeah. But same thing. Organisation called We Vape UK says a ban on disposable vapes is a dangerous strategy that will harm smokers wanting to make the switch. Children should not have access to any vapes, and that is a matter for enforcing existing regulation. This proposed ban would be short-sighted and ineffective. Children will find products on the black market, and adults will go back to smoking. Cigarette sales over the last year have dropped dramatically. They will now likely rise, and with it, the number of people dying from smoking.
Can I disentangle this for a second as well? Because the IEA are arguing from conflicting philosophical premises here. You can argue from the position of I should be allowed to do as I like and the government shouldn't be allowed to tell me what to do. That is a consistent libertarian line of argument, of which I have my sympathies. But then the other argument about health is a harm reduction argument. And harm reduction doesn't talk about virtue. A libertarian argument is meant to be deontological. It's meant to be talking about the natural right for any individual to have bodily autonomy and self-governance.
And pursue their destiny.
And not be coerced. I don't think you can have that without metaphysical foundation, but I'll put that to the side. But then the harm reduction argument doesn't talk about virtue. Harm reduction argument just says, okay, everyone's going to be kind of sordid. Let's just give you the avenue to consume maximally with the least amount of health consequences. And so if you want to go down the libertarian line of argument, you should be arguing, maybe the government shouldn't be stepping in on this, but you have a duty to yourself and the others that you care for to not indulge in vices that you don't need to do, like this, where you're just wasting your money and you look kind of stupid and you're huffing away on possibly heavy metals or formaldehyde if you've got a cigarette of a disreputable brand. But instead they're saying, okay, not only should the government not be allowed to tell you what to do, you should also have a plethora of opportunities to poison yourself in the least worst way possible. So that's the true argument. True argument is what Reem originally said, which is I should be smoking my candy floss vape in peace.
Yes.
You want to consume it. You've already foregone the conclusion here. All of your politics is reoriented around what can I consume, not the principle originally. I agree with the principle originally. I think if you're doing certain things that you'd like to be justified actually reflects more poorly on your character. So
Yes.
it makes me less likely to support you, frankly.
Yes, yeah. And I have my own arguments against libertarianism, which I will actually get into in a short while. But, I also appreciate the vision that you're talking about, where it's people's own volition. They pursue virtue and avoid vice in a society where the government doesn't actually have much of a hand in their life. But I kind of tend to think that those arguments once had their place, but don't so much anymore. Anyway, this person, the vape ban is stupid. More kids are going to try cigarettes instead, and they'll just get their hands on pod devices and Juul. Also, I know so many people who have managed to quit smoking by moving to disposable vapes. They actually help people, to be honest. And to be fair, according to the Telegraph, 14% of smokers quit successfully using e-cigarettes, while just 6% were able to quit without any aids. So it's possible these things do actually help. Now, whether that means they quit nicotine completely or that they just move to disposable vapes, it's not clear.
Patches or gum or something.
Exactly.
Like
It's still not great for you.
Did you see Tom Harwood's tweet the other day, by any chance?
I tend to avoid his Twitter account, so no.
I would.
About
okay. What? Right. So this coincided with Miriam Kate standing up and giving a speech in Parliament about making age verification.
Yeah, you sent me that.
Yeah. Tom Harwood tweeted out it was something akin to, "It is stupid and dangerous to try and stop teenagers."
Oh, yeah, I did actually see that one. I replied to it because it sounded like a very strange self-report saying that they're definitely going to go straight to the deep web.
Yeah, they're going to go straight to the Silk Road to go on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, all right, Tom.
Yeah.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. Well, why do you want to keep porn available for children, Tom? I'm sure you don't. I'm sure it's just a big misunderstanding. Anyway, point being, this kind of thing says, okay, well, even if you try and act against making this accessible to children, even if it's really bad for you and you try and keep it out of the hands of it, they'll still find some way of maximally exploiting you. Okay. Yes, addicts will. Some addicts will download VPNs or pay for whatever sort of subscription service or do crack cocaine or whatever, But the people that would otherwise benefit from a cultural safety net that has been torn asunder, that we were talking about before, that have now fallen through the cracks and are just unconsciously taking these things due to social pressure or because they're not that bright and they've just encountered it and it's become a bad habit, probably would benefit from this being blocked from them. And I think it's actually a sort of aristocratic privilege to say, well, actually, I'm way too intelligent and I'll be able to circumvent this law. Lots of people won't, and lots of people could probably benefit from being taken away for their own good. Well,
that line of argument, I was going to get into this as well. It really annoys me. It's sort of the myth of the ineffectiveness of prohibition. Like, people always use the word prohibition because it calls to mind, prohibition in the 20s in America. And that, supposedly the whole narrative around that is that it didn't work and all the rest of it.
Well, it actually created an organized crime bureaucracy, but they were kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. They had a great aesthetic. You've got to give them that. But actually, I just don't get this, because I've heard this from so many people about so many different things. Abortion being another big one, where people say, well, if making it illegal will do literally nothing. But it's like,
then why are you worried about us banning it?
Well, great point. Yes. But I just think, again, the law enforcement in this country is extremely poor in this era. But if we had if we had the British Bobby, who was actually enforcing the laws and and the laws are being interpreted by wise people, then it works, right? But I mean, sure, granted, the problem is we don't have either of those things as it stands. But I just really don't like this line of argument where it's like, okay, they're always inevitably going to go down this direction. Whereas actually, no. If, again, as I said earlier, if that 6-year-old if the vape wasn't even there in the first place, sure, that 6-year-old might have picked up something else, but he's not picking up the vape. And, again, if cigarettes are not accessible, if the law is enforced effectively, then, his outcomes are going to be better.
Yeah, children are not the hypothetically rational, liberal, autonomous, self-authoring individual.
Yeah.
So these laws may actually work for them, not Holes here who's really determined to get her vape.
And who's also 18. So, yes, moving on then. We're going to move on to our take on this. First of all, I do want to note, this is just an interesting detail, right? The Tories did accept £350,000 from an organisation called Supreme 8 Limited, who is one of the largest companies that sell these colourful death sticks.
Sandeep Chahada, right. Remember I made that comment earlier about Asian-owned vape shops? I mean, that aged like wine.
Yes, indeed. But it is just an interesting detail because whenever the Tories do anything, I think you have to be very skeptical about what their actual end game is. This to me just looks like a kind of easy win for them because I think most people are probably going to support this ban. The British people at large are not libertarians. They do believe in using the state. I think it's in our national and ethnic character to believe in the power of the law and the power of the state. I think we do regard it as being generally a good thing, or can be a good thing. So I think most people will support it. But again, we have to wonder what's the actual game that's being played here. Is it a distraction from something else? Is it, who knows?
My question as well is that it says here that he distributes vapes, but it doesn't necessarily. So it says here, outstanding contribution from vaping, including the distribution of Elf Bar and Lost Mary disposable vapes. Okay, well, if he's got a larger share in the non-disposable vape type, then this might not affect his bottom line. Instead, it might push more customers over to his more expensive products.
Quite possibly.
So, again, it's a lot like the housing market thing. 25% of the Conservative Party's donors are housing developers. And you'd think, oh, they must want to build more houses, right? No, they want to artificially keep the house price and demand inflated and the house price is high so that when they do have to get contracts for building housing, one, they get the monopoly on it because they're most compliant with building regulations rather than smaller firms. And two, they make absolute shed loads when people have to move in and pay premium rates.
Yes, indeed. So I thought I'd highlight that because it was just an interesting piece of information. But I support the ban. And I agree with the arguments about harming children, and I agree with the environmental arguments. Don't care so much for the utilitarian NHS argument. But those are not my principal reasons for supporting this ban. My principal reason, my main reason, is the effeminizing effect that these things have on our society. Ooh, my pink fruity vape stick makes heads go brrr. And it's just, you can't tell me that these things are not like an embodiment of anti-masculinity. You see these guys walking around using them. And I will just say for the purpose of full disclosure, I have used these things in the past. So
I haven't,
actually. That's based.
I'm not decadent.
I've used them in the past purely for research purposes for this segment, of course. And I just feel dirty when I use them in the past. I mean, I've not used one for a while, but I just think they're really cringe. I mean, you said they're pretty gay, and that's pretty much the best thing you can say about it. There's at least a bit of edge to like smoking a cigarette, which I don't endorse because I think you're still killing yourself. But there's a masculine aesthetic to that. Whereas this is just there's something so pathetic about it.
It looks like you're huffing on a highlighter.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
There's nothing emboldening about. It's the same thing of where despite saying this, we do have a merch store. If you're walking around with really vibrant logo T-shirts, if you're a grown man with a Rick and Morty T-shirt,
same energy.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like sleeping in a race car bed.
Yeah,
just stop it. Grow up.
Yeah, it's childish. It's effeminate. A friend of mine who uses these things, he once said, I don't think he was even saying this as a negative thing. He said that one day you'll see everybody walking around with these vapes, and it won't just be nicotine that they contain. It will be antidepressants. It will be ADHD medication. It will be like THC, and everyone will just be kind of sedated. So it's literally like Soma
from Brave New World. Yeah, and
that's basically how I regard these things anyway. They are a kind of sedative thing that people carry around with them and rely on. Because I've known lots of people. A lot of my friends use these things, and they grip them like their life depends on it. They have their hand in their pocket gripping onto it like it's some sort of anxiety like anti-anxiety measure,
like a comfort blanket.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Well, the other thing. So I'm by no means a Freudian because I think he chats a load of BS. But in terms of being in a stage of arrested development and needing something like an oral fixation that's proximate to a dummy, if you're sitting there huffing on a vape stick every couple of seconds, like I've got a really good friend who actually has ADHD, and he passively just bring it up to his mouth in public locations, indoors, and I'll say, mate, you can't do that in here. And I go, oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
it's an unconscious infantilized behavior. It's just not becoming.
Yeah, again, the sort of imagery of it, the symbolism of it, if you want, it is very, it's very, again, just childish. But I've watched these things like sap friends of energy and of virility. It kind of dulls you in a weird way. I have one particular friend who I'm thinking of who knew he like was completely addicted to these things, and he knew what they were doing to him, but he just couldn't stop. And that's addiction, and that's like anything else. But it's addiction to this product in particular. I think to a man, it's an extremely emasculating thing if you can recognize it in the way that he did. And I just think, again, what is lost by banning these things? Seriously. What was his name?
Random Indian man's name.
Yeah.
Again, many such cases.
Old Chadder here is not going to make a profit, sure. Oh, big sad. But
yeah, but think of the GDP. Line must go up.
Well, there we go. Now, again, there is still the libertarian argument of, everything I've said, sure, it's emasculating, it's feminizing and all the rest of it, but people should still have the free choice to do these things if they want to, their own autonomy and all the rest of it. And I, again, in a previous age, I think these arguments could have been true when we did have an actual social fabric and a kind of a sense of nationhood and a sense of propriety and duty and all of these things that are out of fashion these days. Because libertarians behave as if everybody is as enlightened as they are. They behave as if everyone is a kind of 120 IQ, university-educated, self-possessed, disciplined person like they are. Oh, I can live in a society where these things are offered to me very, I have easy access to these things. But I have the self-possession to choose not to do these things because I'm a very mature and intelligent person. I think they forget that most people are not like that, frankly. I think most people... I think essentially the masses do need to be led. The masses
they respond to incentives, not ideas.
The revealed behavior of the masses is to pursue the path of least resistance and maximum pleasure. And so I think in cases like this, where these things are just a net negative, they bring no benefit to society. There's nothing wrong with telling the masses that no, actually, you can't have these. These are not good for our society. They are a drain on our energy. They turn us into a weaker people. I had this image in my head one time of like imagining all the various 20th century leaders who smoke cigars, like Churchill, for example, if he just had like a vape, and just how much more pathetic.
Get on Mid-Journey, people.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But I think that's why, like, I was on the podcast with Josh a few months ago, and I said about how I think that there needs to be far stronger laws around food, because I do think that, I think it's observable that if you do stock the shelves with hyper palatable, like BS foods that have half a dozen ingredients you can't pronounce, most people don't have that kind of, again, the self-possession to recognize those things as, oh, I'm going to poison myself if I eat that. No, most people just get the yummy taste.
I am inclined to agree with the libertarians on this point in that most of the food regulation laws are made because certain companies lobby the government to include their maladaptive ingredients in them. Like the carbohydrates lobby decided to lobby so the food pyramid had that padded out, and it creates so many personal issues in that. And then of course there's, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but there was a politician, influential part of a family who makes lots and lots of conspiracy theorists raise their eyebrow, and he only voted twice, and one of those votes was to make depasteurized milk not be able to be sold. It's things like that. It's just like, why would you do that? Raw milk is actually pretty good for you.
They don't want the masses to know about the power of raw milk.
Well, and ironically, yeah. So sometimes government regulation can be made maladaptively by awful people that are seeking to profit or incapacitate the strength of men. And so I do think sometimes a stronger cultural texture that catches people and uses communal pressure is better than state legislation. But also, I'm not going to cry if these disappear.
The question then is, though, where does that come from? Because there is, of course, the argument in our spheres that culture is downstream from law. Yeah. And that's an argument that I'm quite partial to, because I think you can use the law, you can use the state to essentially repair the culture. Because what the kind of cultural fabric that you're talking about, where there is a sense of enforced propriety, not through the law, but through expectations of others, that's great, but we don't have that now. Yeah. And you don't get that back by just sitting there and hoping for it to reemerge. And sure, the role, people like Jordan Peterson, for example, are good for this because he does speak to the masses in a way that is resonant, and he does get young men, for example, to take personal responsibility and take their life seriously and all the rest of it. But still, it's still a minority that he's influencing. Whereas if you use the law and you use force, you can actually repair the fabric of the culture. Of course, it depends on the people in the positions of power, as we've already touched on. But I just think that we shouldn't be scared of using the state. We shouldn't be scared of using the law. We need to get away from this liberal idea that if you ever use the state, it's always and everywhere a bad thing. It's actually like, no, you can use it for good. And obviously that line of argument can if it's in the wrong hands, can lead to bad outcomes. But again, it just comes down to who is making the decision. So anyway, I think that this is a good thing. Again, I don't necessarily, my reasons are not necessarily the same as the government's, nor are yours. But I don't know. Disposable vapes, bad for society, make men effeminate. Good that they're gone.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Contemplation series, this episode on the economics of organized crime. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.